Counsel for the Department of Procurement Services, and today we're going to be going through our bid incentives and programs. We have a number of bid incentives and we have a number of programs, so it's a lot of material we'll be covering this afternoon. I'm going to try to give a good overview of each of the programs and incentives we have, and hopefully have some time at the end for questions. One thing I'd just like to note before I dive in, if you do have questions, I cannot answer specific questions if you are currently bidding on something or if it's about something that's advertised right now. However, I can answer general questions about the incentives and how they work. So with that, if you can next slide. So we're going to start with our programs before we move on to our incentives. We have a number of programs, and I'm going to cover each of the ones listed here. Next slide. So starting with our small business initiative. So this is a program that applies to construction contracts. And the way it works is designed for small contracts. So contracts that are $3 million or less can be designated as an SBI or small business initiative construction contract. The name implies it's designed to provide opportunities for small businesses to participate on city-funded contracts, so that it's a level playing field besides like-sized firms, between like-sized firms, I should say. The key points for the small business initiative is that SBI projects are exclusive to small businesses, and small businesses must be local businesses. And by local, we mean that the principal place of business and the majority of the full-time regular workforce must be located in the 6-county region. And the 6-county region is defined in our program rules. It is the counties of Cook, DuPage, Kane, Lake, McHenry, or Will in Illinois. So there's 2 tiers for SBI. There's SBI 1, which is projects with an estimated cost of $2 to $3 million. For those projects, the small local business cannot be any larger than the size standards you would need to apply for certification as an MBE or WBE or VBE in our construction program. So that means the gross receipts can be no larger than the SBA size standards for the area in which you're operating, and the business can and the business owners can have a personal net worth that is no more than the personal net worth limit set forth in the construction program. For SBI 2, this is for even slightly smaller contracts that are less than $2 million. So bidders must be small local businesses, and the gross receipts can be no more than half of those SBA size standards. And the personal net worth of at least 51% of the owners have to be less than the personal net worth limits for certification in our construction program. One other important thing to keep in mind is with SBI projects, small businesses have to perform the majority of the work. So small businesses don't need to do all of the work, but the majority of the work, either at the prime level or in addition, prime and subs, most of the work needs to be performed by small businesses. Next slide. So the mid-sized business initiative program is similar, but it's designed to provide opportunities for small and mid-sized businesses. So these are firms that maybe have exceeded those small business size standards, but are still growing and developing and need the additional opportunities to compete against like-sized firms. So there's 2 tiers, just like the SBI program, there's 2 tiers for the MBI program. I'm going to start with MBI 2 because it's the smaller of the 2. These are for projects with an estimated cost of $3 to $10 million. In order to be eligible, the firm must be a mid-sized business, meaning the gross receipts are no more than 1.5 times the SBA size standards for the area in which we're operating, and it has to be at least 51% owned by individuals whose personal net worth is no more than 1.5 times the personal net worth limit set forth for certification in our construction program. And the business must also be a local business. So just like with SBI, the business must be located in the 6-county region of Cook, DuPage, Kane, Lake, McHenry, or Will County. MBI 2 is for slightly larger projects. It's with an estimated cost of $10 to $20 million. For MBI 2, in order to bid on the project, you must be a mid-sized business that's local. And the gross receipts can be no more than 2 times the SBI size standards for your area of specialty. And it has to be at least 51% owned by individuals whose personal net worth does not exceed 2 times, or excuse me, is not 2 times in excess of the certification personal net worth limits. So for both the SBI and MBI programs, only businesses that are SBI or are small businesses or mid-sized businesses as defined can bid on the projects. For the MBI program, any certified firm who is an MBE, WBE, VBE is automatically going to be considered eligible because by the nature of the certification, we know that they meet these size standards. However, if you are not certified firm or if you are a DBE firm, you would need to submit an affidavit verifying that you're eligible because for the DBE program, we need to confirm that you're local. For non-certified firms, we need to confirm that you meet these size standards. And one additional point to make is that at least 51% of the work has to be performed by mid-sized business enterprises. That's what we mean by MBE in this slide. So you have to have either on a prime level or prime and subs, mid-sized local businesses have to perform the majority of the work. Next slide. Okay, the Non-Construction Mid-Sized Business Initiative is a similar program and a newer program, and it's designed to provide opportunities for small and mid-sized businesses on non-construction programs. This program is for contracts with an estimated value of 3 to 10 million. In order to be eligible, the business has to be a small or mid-sized local business, meaning the principal place of business and majority full-time workforce is in the 6-county region. And the bidder can be no more than 1.5 times the size standard for certification, meaning your gross receipts in your area your gross receipts can be no more than 1.5 times the size standard you would need to be if you applied for certification in our non-construction program. And all of the, or excuse me, I shouldn't say all of them, 51% of the work or majority of the work needs to be performed by small and mid-sized local businesses. Next slide. Okay, so those are 3 programs that I just went through for small and mid-sized local businesses. I'm going to shift gears and talk about the diversity credit program for a minute. So the diversity credit program is designed to increase the participation of minority and women-owned business enterprises in private contracts. And by private contracts, we mean contracts that are not awarded by a government entity. And the way it works is we encourage participation in the private sector contracts by allowing a prime contractor to earn credit towards a future city contract's MBE, WBE goals. So how it works is if a prime contractor on a private sector contract that does not have its affirmative action goals utilizes MBE, WBEs, and those MBE, WBEs are performing a direct commercially useful function on the project in the area of specialty that they're certified by the city, the prime contractor can earn $1 of credit for every $3 earned by those MBE, WBE firms, up to a maximum of 5% credit. So that means if you have potentially earned a 5% credit and you have a 25% MBE goal on a project, you could apply that 5% MBE credit you've earned through the diversity credit program towards that city contract's goal, meaning you would then need to have 20% of the contract performed by MBEs, and you could use that additional 5% to make up the additional 5%. The credits can only be used once, so you can bid on as many projects as you want, but you can only use it once, and the credit expires after 1 year. Okay, next slide. Okay, the Mentor Protege program. So this is a program that for some reason, I feel like people are, what I've heard from when we've done outreach on this program is that firms think that this is only for construction. This is actually a program that applies to both construction and non-construction firms. It can be used on either. And it's designed to increase the participation and capacity of MBE and WBE firms in city contracts by making the utilization of MBE WBEs and mentoring MBE WBEs eligible for credit towards MBE WBE goals. So the way it works is that at the time of bid, a firm can submit a proposal to enter into a mentor-protege agreement between a prime and an MBE WBE sub, or between two different subcontractors working under the prime. So it could be two certified, it could be a non-certified, and then an MBE WBE. So in your compliance plan, you would check that you are seeking to earn credit through participation in the mentor protege program, and you would provide a copy of the proposed agreement. If the agreement is approved and you can participate in the program, you can potentially earn 0.5% participation credit for every 1% earned by the protege firm, up to a maximum of 5%. The mentor protege agreement has to be designed to assist the protege in becoming a self-sustaining, competitive, and profitable firm. So we're going to look at a number of factors when we review the mentor protege agreement to see how the mentor and protege are going to be working together throughout the course of the contract, so that at the end of the contract, the protege, the mentor and protege can demonstrate that there have actually been real skills and assistance provided to the protege through this program. There is in our program rules a sample agreement that you can use to model a proposed mentor-protege agreement after, and it highlights all of the different things that we look for, the different reporting requirements, and all of the different rules for how to apply. So if you're interested in participating, I encourage you to review the rules, which are posted on our website. I already mentioned that the prime can mentor an MBE WBE, or the prime subcontractors can mentor an MBE WBE. The credit can be earned either way. And as I mentioned earlier, when you're bidding on a project, you have to indicate on your compliance schedules that you are interested in planning or participating in the mentor protege program. And also with the mentor protege program, I know I'm talking about programs right now, but there also is an incentive aspect to the program. So the mentor protege program, you can earn the participation credit, and you could also potentially be eligible for a 1% bid incentive. Okay, next slide. Okay, the target market program. So the target market program is designed to provide opportunities for MBEs and WBEs on city-funded non-construction contracts. In order to be eligible, the firm has to be certified as an MBE, WBE, or a joint venture consisting of MBEs and WBEs. And you must be certified by the city or Cook County prior to bidding. So it says city on the slide, but the city has a reciprocity program with Cook County, meaning if you're certified with Cook County, you're automatically considered eligible and will count your certification for the city. And like the SBI and MBI contracts, I was talking about those programs in the first few slides. For the target market program, the majority of the work has to be performed by certified firms. So you can subcontract some work to non-certified firms, but we want to see the majority going to MBEs and WBEs. Next slide. Okay, phased graduation program. So this program, the phased graduation program, is designed to maximize the diversity in city contracting by making businesses eligible for continued participation in the program for at least 3 additional years after a firm has grown too large to continue participating in the MBE WBE programs. So when a firm gets too big to remain eligible for certification, we don't want to just throw the firm out to the wolves and say good luck. This allows a firm to slowly ease their way out of the program for a period of 3 years for reduced participation credit. So the first year that you are considered a participating established business, meaning you're too big to be considered certified, but you're still in the phased graduation program, you can earn 75% participation credit for the first year. So for every $1 paid to the firm, the prime contractor can get credited for 75 cents. In the second year, it's 50%. And the third year, it's 25%. If at any time the firm becomes eligible again for certification while they're participating in the phased graduation program, they can apply again to be recertified by the city as an MBE or WBE. And so just a key point on here for what I mean about how you become a participating established business or how you get too big. So if a firm has exceeded the gross receipts or employee size limits for certification, or its owner's personal net worth limit, or personal net worth exceeds the PNW limit for certification, then they'll have to be considered graduated from the program and can be counted as a participating established business for 3 years. Next slide. Okay, so those were our programs. Now I'm going to shift over to our bid incentives. So we have a number of incentives, and some are applicable for construction only, some non-construction only, and some can apply to both construction and non-construction. When we advertise a bid, it will say in the bid documents which incentives you can apply for, and it will include all the applicable affidavits that you would need to submit and all of the information about what needs to be submitted with those affidavits if you're interested in applying for these. So if you're applying for, or if you're bidding on a construction project, you're not going to see the non-construction incentives, and vice versa. If you're bidding on a non-construction project, you're not going to see the construction incentives included in the bid documents. Next slide. So I'm going to start with the construction bid incentives. The first one is the Apprentice Utilization Bid Incentive. So this first one is designed to encourage prime contractors to utilize apprentices on city-funded construction contracts with an estimated value of $100,000 or more. So this means that it's going to apply to competitive bids. It's not going to apply to small orders, but we typically don't have construction small orders, but just wanted to flag that point. So apprentice, what we mean by that is a person who's sponsored into an apprenticeship training program by a contractor that's authorized by a union to sponsor apprentices. And the apprentice is a person who's enrolled in or has graduated from a construction technology training program administered by city colleges, or is a graduate of a high school operated by CPS. This incentive is slightly different from most of our incentives in that it is an incentive that you earn during the contract that you can apply to a future contract. So at the time of bid, you would make a commitment to utilize apprentices for a certain percentage of the work. And then at contract closeout, we would evaluate to determine whether or not you met that commitment. And if you do meet the commitment, you could potentially earn a bid incentive that you can apply to a future contract, or excuse me, a future bid. So there's 2 tiers. If at contract closeout, if you made a commitment at the time of bid that 5 to 10% of the work will be performed by eligible apprentices, and at contract closeout, you've met that commitment, you can earn a 0.5% bid incentive. If at the time of bid, you made a commitment of 11 to 15% of the work being performed by apprentices, it looks like we got a typo or a little mistake on this slide, 11 to 15% performed by eligible apprentices. At contract closeout, if we determine that you've met that commitment, you can be eligible for a 1% incentive. So if you are eligible for an incentive because you met your commitments to utilize apprentices for the percentage of work you've committed to, you'll get what's called an earned credit certificate. That credit certificate is valid for a period of 3 years, but you can only win 1 contract. So after you've earned it, you can bid on multiple contracts and seek to apply the incentive, but you'll only be able to win once. Okay, next slide. Our EEO incentive, or Equal Employment Opportunity Incentive. This incentive is designed to increase the opportunities for minority and women journey workers, apprentices, and laborers on city-funded construction contracts with an estimated value of $100,000 or more. So if you've been on city-funded construction contracts before, you're likely familiar with filling out or at least seeing in the bid documents a formula that you would complete that gets you to an award criteria figure. So when we're talking about EEO incentive, that's what we're referring to. So using a cadencing formula, bidders can propose to utilize minorities and women for certain percentages of the work as journey workers, apprentices, and laborers on the contract. For the purposes of calculating the incentive, the commitment cap is 15% for female workers and 70% for minority workers. Those are not limits. We would always encourage to have diverse workforce, and if you can go above these, that's excellent. But for the purposes of calculating the incentive, these are the caps. Bidders can get 150% credit for every work hour performed by a minority or women worker who resides in a socioeconomically disadvantaged area. In the bid documents, there is a map that is created by the Department of Planning and Development that highlights which areas of the city are considered socioeconomically disadvantaged areas. So after you complete the calculations that are in the canvassing formula, the final calculation represents the award criteria figure, and that is how we evaluate bids for construction contracts that are city funded. Next slide. Okay, and now we are going to talk about our second apprentice incentive. So this incentive is pretty similar to the CPS and City College's apprentice incentive, except for this one is designed to provide opportunities for returning citizens or ex-offenders. And it applies to city-funded construction contracts with an estimated value of $100,000 or more. We work with the Department of Family and Support Services to, and they work with delegate agencies to recruit, screen, and refer potential employees. All candidates go through an initial intake process where their eligibility for the program is determined. And the way the program works is if you make a commitment to utilize eligible apprentices for 5 to 7% of the contract, at contract closeout, if you have actually met that commitment, you can earn a bid incentive that can be applied to a future contract of up to 0.5%. For 11 to 15% of the work hours, it's 1%. Just like the other apprentice incentive, you will get an earned credit certificate that is valid for 3 years that you can seek to bid on and apply it to multiple bids in that 3-year period, but you can only win one contract using it. Okay, project area subcontractor bid incentive. So this is designed as an incentive for prime contractors to utilize subcontractors that are located in the area where the project is being completed for city-funded construction contracts. A few key points: the subcontractor has to be a small business. The subcontractor has to actually perform meaningful day-to-day business at a facility that's located in the project area, and that must be the place of employment for the majority of its regular full-time workforce. So when we say project area, in the bid documents, it will identify a project area, which are set by the community areas in Chicago. So it will be defined in your contract, or excuse me, your bid documents, what that project area is. So if you commit to utilizing a small business that actually has their principal place of business in that project area, you could potentially earn this incentive. So the subcontractor has to hold all required city license and be subject to city taxes, and the city has the right to request evidence to verify that the subcontractor meets these requirements. It's a tiered incentive. So if you utilize a project area subcontractor for 1 to 16% of the work, you can get a 5%, excuse me, 0.5% or 0.5% incentive. 17 to 32% is a 1% incentive. 33 to 49% is 1.5% bid incentive, and 50% or more is a 2% bid incentive. So these incentives work by you apply at the time of bid, and if we verify that the subcontractor you are seeking to use is eligible, we will apply the incentive to that very bid. And the bid incentives, I probably should have said this early on, but the bid incentives function by artificially reducing your bid price purely for evaluation purposes. So if you are eligible for a 2% incentive, we'll reduce your bid by 2% when comparing it to other bids. But then if you are awarded the contract, because that makes you the low bidder, then you will be awarded the contract in the value of your base bid, not the bid minus the incentive cost. I always have a note on here. If you can go back to the last slide, please. We just have a note at the bottom here. There are some residency requirements on city-funded construction contracts that for contracts that are valued at $100,000 or more, 7.5% of the work must be performed by project area residents and 50% by city residents. And work performed by project area residents counts towards the overall city residents requirement. So we just wanted to flag that. It's not an incentive, but just since we're talking project area, we thought we would add that in. Okay, next slide. Okay, veteran-owned subcontractor utilization bid incentive. This applies to city-funded construction contracts, and it's designed to encourage the utilization of VBEs, or veteran-owned subcontractors, in the performance of the contract. In order to be eligible, the bidder, either on its own or through subcontract, or excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm mixing up my incentives. For this one specifically, the veteran-owned subcontractor utilization, the bidder must commit to using veteran-owned small local business enterprises, or VBEs. So the VBE has to be certified by the city of Chicago in order to be eligible for this incentive. So it's not enough that a VBE is small and local, they have to be certified by the city, and you'll have to provide the certificate of certification to us when you're applying for this. It's a tiered incentive, like many of our incentives are, and it is based off of the commitment that you make to utilize veteran-owned subcontractors in the performance of the contract, and it ranges from 0.5% to 2%. Next slide. Okay, city-based manufacturers bid incentive. So this is, we just went through all of the construction incentives, and now this is one that applies to non-construction contracts. So this applies to contracts for goods. So it's designed to increase contracting and supply opportunities and participation by city-based manufacturers. In order to be eligible, the manufacturer has to be licensed, taxed, and operating in the city. And it only applies to contracts for goods that are with an estimated value of $100,000 or more. So you're not going to see this in a small order. And it's a tiered incentive ranging from 1% to 2%. The way this one works is that the amount of the incentive that you're potentially eligible for is tied to the percentage of goods that will be provided by or are manufactured by a city-based manufacturer. So 25 to 49% of the goods results in a 1%, and so on. Okay, next slide. Okay, and so now these are incentives. These next ones I'm going to go through are incentives that apply to both construction and non-construction. First is the alternately powered vehicle bid incentive. So this one is designed to encourage city vendors to use alternately powered vehicles in their business fleet. In order to be eligible, the business has to be located in the 6-county region. So again, that's Cook, DuPage, Kane, Lake, McHenry, or Will. And a majority of the fleet, which has to be at least 10 vehicles, are located and used in the 6-county region. And the majority of those vehicles need to be alternately powered. And alternately powered vehicles mean vehicles that are fueled by alternate fuel. So that can include, but it isn't limited to natural gas, liquefied petroleum gas, hydrogen, ethanol, ED5, and electric vehicles. So if you are eligible for this incentive, it's a 0.5% bid incentive. So it'll reduce your bid by 0.5%. Next slide. Okay, next is the bid incentive for business enterprises owned or operated by people with disabilities, or BEPD. So this is designed to increase contracting opportunities and participation by BEPDs. In order to be eligible, the firm must be certified as a BEPD by the city of Chicago. The business enterprise has to be at least 51% or more owned by persons with disability, and generally to be certified by the city. If you are interested in becoming certified as a BEPD, or if you know firms that might be eligible, I encourage you to look at our regulations for all of the different rules that apply to certification for BEPDs. You can earn this incentive at the prime or subcontractor level. So the prime itself can be a VEPD or a subcontractor can be a VEPD. And it's a tiered incentive ranging from 1 to 4%, depending on the level of participation by the VEPDs on the contract. Next slide. Okay, city-based bid incentive. This is a popular bid incentive. It is, or somewhat recently, I think in the past year or two, was increased. It was previously 2, 4, or 6%, and now it is 4, 6, or 8%. It's designed to increase contracting opportunities and participation by city-based businesses. And it applies to contracts with an estimated value of $100,000 or more. The way it works is you can be potentially eligible for one of the 3 incentives that are listed on here. It's not all 3 combined, it's just you, the 4%, 6%, or the 8%. You can be eligible for the 4% incentive if you are a city-based business. That means that you conduct meaningful day-to-day business from a facility in the city. The majority of the regular full-time employees work out of that facility. You hold all city licenses and you're subject to city taxes. And the city reserves the right to request information from the bidder to verify that they're actually a city-based business. For example, in order to determine that the majority of the regular full-time employees work out of the city, we could request a list of all of your employees with information about where they work, so if you are a business that has multiple facilities, you would need to tell us which ones work in each facility so we can make sure that the majority of your employees work out of that city-based facility. So if you're eligible for that 4% incentive and the majority of your regular full-time workforce are city residents, you can be eligible for a 6% incentive. And then if you're eligible for that 6% incentive because you're a city-based business and the majority of your workforce are city residents, and the majority of those city resident employees live in socioeconomically disadvantaged areas, then you could potentially be eligible for an 8% incentive. And again, the socioeconomically disadvantaged areas are the areas identified in the map created by the Department of Planning and Development that's included in the bid documents. Okay, next slide. And here's the map I was just speaking of. So this is a map that is available on the city's website, but it's also included in the bid document, so you can see exactly what areas we're speaking of when you are seeking to apply to this incentive. So the red highlighted areas are the areas that are socioeconomically disadvantaged areas. Okay, next slide. Okay, bid incentive to encourage MBEWB participation. So this is designed to encourage participation of MBEWBEs when there's no contract goals. So there's certain instances where the city cannot set MBEWB participation goals because there's an insufficient number of certified firms available. In that instance, we would have a 0 goals contract. It's typically where we either don't have any firms certified or there are less than 3 firms certified in any subcontracting opportunities. In that instance, there isn't competition, so we wouldn't be able to set a goal. To be eligible for the incentive, you would need to submit a compliance plan with the bid, identify how you're going to be utilizing MBs and WBs, even though we don't have a goal on the contract. The participation can be at the prime level or sub level, and it can be direct or indirect. And it's a tiered incentive. So it ranges from 0.75% to 2%, depending on the percentage of commitment that you've made to utilize MBWBs on the contract. Okay, next slide. Okay, veteran-owned and small business joint venture bid incentive. So this incentive, there's 2 components to it. So I'm going to try to walk through both without confusing everyone. It's designed to provide opportunities for veteran-owned businesses and small businesses. So you can either be eligible for this incentive by being a VBE, a small local veteran-owned business enterprise certified by the city, or you can bid as a joint venture that consists of a small local business and a veteran-owned business. So like I said, the VBE can qualify by itself. There's no need to JV with other business, but the VBE has to be certified by the city. For joint ventures, all members must be an SBE, a small business enterprise, a veteran-owned business enterprise, or both. But at least one of those members has to be a veteran-owned business enterprise. At least 30% of the joint venture has to be held by small businesses, and at least 30% has to be held by veteran-owned business enterprises. And the JV must self-perform at least 20% of the work. And then one final requirement is that none of the JV members may act as brokers. And this applies only to contracts with an estimated value of $100,000. And if you're eligible for it, either as a VBE on your own or through a joint venture, it's a 5% bid incentive. Okay, next slide. Okay, and then this is one of our newest incentives, the Diverse Workforce and Management Bid Incentive. And these are designed to encourage contractors to employ a diverse workforce in management. And it applies to contracts with an estimated value of $100,000 or more. So there's two tiers, and in this instance, they can be combined. So if a bidder has a diverse workforce that is 10 to 20% of the workforce, is diverse, you're eligible for a 2% incentive. Let's say you have a 10% workforce is diverse and you're eligible for the 2%, and 10% of your management is also diverse, then you're eligible for an additional 0.5%. So you could be eligible for 2.5. Similarly, if let's say 50% of your workforce is diverse, you're eligible for a 6% incentive. And then let's say 50% of your management is also diverse as well, you're also eligible for a 4% incentive. So collectively, you could potentially earn a 10% incentive. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I kind of touched on this as we went through the incentives, but just wanted to briefly go over how incentives work. So the applicable incentives will be listed in the bid package. So when you download and view the bid package, it will already have in there a list of all incentives that apply to that bid and that you could potentially apply for, along with the affidavits that you'll need to complete if you want to apply for that bid. It's important to read through the bid documents and all of the instructions, because in some instances you need to submit the affidavit, but there might be additional documentation you need to provide us with. The incentive will not be applied if you don't give us that information. So if we have asked for something specific and it says you must submit it and then you do not, we will not be able to verify you're eligible for that incentive, so we will not apply it. If you are eligible, for the majority of the incentives, your bid will, at the time of bid, be reduced in the amount of the incentive for evaluation purposes. For the 2 apprentice incentives, we will track whether you've earned it, and then at contract closeout, you will be granted an incentive you can apply to a future contract. If you are awarded a contract because of your bid being reduced by incentives, you will be awarded a contract in the amount of your base bid before we've taken those incentives off. So it's purely for evaluation purposes. Okay, next slide. So some incentives can't be applied together. So I already mentioned the city-based businesses. It is the 4%, 6%, or 8% incentive. You cannot get all 3. One other thing to keep in mind is if you are applying for the city-based business incentive, you cannot also apply for the city-based manufacturer incentive. So it's either one or the other. For the city-based manufacturer incentive, if you're applying for that, you can't use the city-based business incentives, as I mentioned, but you also cannot apply for the project area subcontractor utilization incentive or the veteran-owned subcontractor utilization incentive. That is built into the ordinance that gives us the authority to apply these incentives. So for project area incentive, as I mentioned, no city-based manufacturer incentive. For the SBE, veteran-owned business enterprise joint venture, or VBE incentive, you can't combine that with the veteran-owned subcontractor utilization incentive and vice versa. So this is the list of ones that you can't combine. So if you are interested in applying to multiple incentives, it's just kind of important to keep this in mind that you potentially can only be eligible for one or the other in certain situations. Okay, next slide. Okay, so some requirements after award. You may be required at contract closeout to submit additional documentation, or perhaps throughout the course of the contract, for us to verify that you're actually meeting your commitments. Because at contract closeout, if we have determined that you've not made your commitments, you may potentially be fined up to 3 times the amount of the incentive granted. Or we could deny the earned certificate credit, depending on the type of incentive. We could also determine that you're a non-responsible, meaning that you would not be eligible to bid on city work for whatever project we've made that determination on. So because it's very important that if a firm is going to earn an incentive because they're making a commitment to utilize certain types of firms for a percentage of the work, we want to make sure that that's actually being achieved throughout the contract. Okay, so next slide. I think that's it. Yeah. Okay, so that leaves us time for questions. So I know I went through those very quickly. Again, I cannot comment on any open procurement right now, or if there's any specific situations that are ongoing, but general questions about the incentives, I'd be happy to answer.
Well, Julie, I guess you did a wonderful job as always, because we don't have any questions right at the moment. But for those of you that might have come on a little late and do not know how to ask the question, because you can't take yourself off of mute, if you would hover around the bottom of your screen, you will see 3 dots inside of a circular bubble. The ellipse, you can go ahead and click on that. A menu will come up. Q&A should be on that menu. If you click on Q&A, you will get a panel that comes up on the screen. You can type in your question, press the enter key, and we will begin to see your questions. However, as always, Julie does a fantastic job speaking on the bid incentives and programs. So if there are no further questions, I want to thank Julie for her presentation. And I also want to thank the attendees for spending some time of your day with us today. And like Julie said, this information, the PowerPoint that she just went through, is up on our website. So if you go to www.chicago.gov/DPS, and you go down to the part that what we do and click on education and outreach, you will see all of the descriptions of the workshops, and you will also see the PowerPoints right underneath the descriptions of the workshop. So you can find a copy there. And if you want to hear this presentation, you can go to YouTube. There are some archived versions of Julie already up there, so you can hear those and hear the questions that class asked. I guess there's no questions coming in for you, Julie, so I do want to thank you so much. I want to thank all of the attendees. I would say stay safe, wear your mask, social distance, and wash your hands. And we will see each other again sometime, hopefully really, really soon. Thanks so much, and have a great rest of your day. You can check out, Julie, if you need to go.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.